Have a beautiful friendship.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
No, I am your father.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
You're listening to After the Ending, the only film podcast where we tell you what happens after the ending of your favorite films. And now, here are your hosts, Mike Spring and Phil Edwards.
Hello, and welcome to After the Ending. I'm Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
And tonight we are here to talk about movies, and nothing but movies, except we might talk about a few things other than movies. But mostly movies.
That's right. Yeah, there might be some TV and maybe some other bits in our recommendations, but on the whole, it's going to be movies as normal.
You guys know the drill. But that's what we're here to talk about. Is talk about movies, and this is episode 149. Now I have to mention this. I feel like because I'm a little OCD with these things. There was a slight mishap in some of our numbering on some of our various channels recently. I think we had kind of both of our most recent interview episodes. One with Chad Michael Collins, who's an awesome actor and a friend of the show. One with Garth Ennis, comic book writing superstar. We're both numbered number 147 at one point or another on various platforms, but Chad was 147. Garth was 148. This is officially 149. Next episode will be our official 150th full-length episode.
Wow.
So, just wanted to clear that up. But that's the boring nitty-gritty stuff. Let's get to the fun stuff. Phil,
almost 150 episodes.
Sorry.
Almost 150 episodes. That's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. But now here's the thing. I am toying. I always toy with the idea of renumbering them all because we have all those mini episodes in the beginning and we don't really do those anymore. So I feel like I should renumber everything and just make them all official episodes. And because I feel like saying we're at 150, but we've really done like closer to like 200 episodes. I think we had almost 50 mini episodes. So I feel like we should get credit for that,
Yeah.
But I don't know. That seems like a lot of work also.
Yeah.
And then it's going to throw everything off. And we're like, oh, if you want to hear what we thought of this movie, go back to episode 27. But then it wouldn't be 27 anymore. So
that's a good point. Yeah. Keep it to what it is. But it's still, and they're all there to listen to on whatever you listen to podcasts. And we recently did the videos as well. So you can catch us now on YouTube as well. Yep. Or if you're watching live on Facebook, you can, which is now, hi. You can leave comments as well on the Facebook page when this is live. And we'll be able to respond to them and throw them up during the actual
right. We'll try to actually throw up on your comments, as Phil just kind of said. We'll try not to do that because that's gross.
Yeah, we can bring them up on the screen.
Right, there you go. That just sounds a little better.
It does, yeah.
So Phil, why don't you tell people what we're talking about tonight? I'm excited. I think we have a really fun show tonight.
Yeah, we're going to be going after the ending of Last of the Mohicans, the excellent Daniel Day-Lewis film, which should be fun. We're going to be talking about our top 5 favorite or top 5 best explosions in film. Mm-hmm. And we're also going to be discussing Morbius and, how's the best way to put it, films which in a franchise.
Here's what I called it. Juggernaut film franchises. Okay. And then what to do when they're not quite the juggernaut they used to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But the headline is we talk about Juggernaut film franchises. But there's more to it than that, and it's more about like kind of how they go, what happens when there's that one film comes along that maybe isn't living up to the rest of the franchise. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit too.
Yeah, or the Sony effect in the case of Marvel films.
But it's not just Sony.
No, that's true. That's true. There are lots of other explosions. Those two. Lots of other types, but just because Morbius is the most recent one.
Right, and for the record, this will all be spoiler free for Morbius. Not that there's a ton of spoilers in it, but it will be spoiler free. I don't know if you've even seen it, Phil. I have seen it, but that's just the kicking off point. Yeah. We're not really going to even talk about Morbius all that much. We're really going to use it as a launch pad for our topic.
That's right. Yeah. So we've got that, and also we'll be doing our usual after the ending recommendations, which can be anything, can be films, books, games, anything that's been taking our fancy over the past couple of weeks.
Exactly. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump right into things and start talking about 1992's Last of the Mohicans. Phil, you said it was the excellent Last of the Mohicans, so I'm guessing I know how you feel about this film. Tell us how you feel about Last of the Mohicans.
I think it's one of the worst films ever. No, I really like this one. It's it took me a while. I didn't see it when it first came out. I'm not sure why. Maybe I think as Daniel Day-Lewis, lots of his films were all quite kind of like at the time were more like he seemed to be doing like kitchen sink dramas as they were over here, where that's, I think he'd done My Left Foot and things like that. And the one where he was in prison. Oh, I've forgotten the name of it. Sorry, but and
In the Name of
it was
the
those
Father.
kind of ones where I watched and enjoyed, but they always seem to be a bit too serious, if you know what I mean. And so when they came on, you always have to be in the right kind of mood. So this one, I was thinking, oh, well, I'm not sure. But then when I eventually did watch it, it was a cracking action adventure movie. It looked amazing. The cinematography is stunning. The shot composition, the soundtrack, the performances. I just thought it was amazing. It just blew me away when I watched it. And the music is just, whenever I hear the music, it's amazing.
Right. I think.
What about you?
I just have to say, I think the prison one was In the Name of the Father. Is that the one?
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I like it quite a bit. I did not love it when it first came out. It was very popular when it first came out, and I remember seeing it. I don't remember if I saw it in theaters or not, but I remember seeing it and thinking like, yeah, it's okay. I mean, I liked it. I never disliked the film, but I actually rewatched it just I don't know, a month or two ago, which is sort of why we ended up doing it today, because I just thought like, oh hey, there's never been a sequel to that. Like, let's, I know it's based on a classic novel, obviously, but I did like it quite a bit, actually. I think I liked it more than I almost wanted to, in a way. Not because I didn't want to like it, or I wasn't like hate watching or anything, but sometimes it's like I like to validate my opinions and be like, yeah, I was right, this movie still is overrated. But it was kind of like, no, it's actually pretty good. It is still, it's a really good film. I think it has a couple of minor flaws, but honestly, everything you said about it, I mean, it looks great. It's I feel like very accurate to the time period. Like, it doesn't feel like a modern movie that's trying and failing to look like a period piece. It feels like a real, like it captures that period, I do think Daniel Day-Lewis is really good, and I feel like it's actually one of the films he's more personable in than some of his other ones, But it's a really good, solid film, and I like it. I like it quite a bit. And I was just waiting the whole time for the whole, no matter what happens, stay alive. I will find you. Because that's the famous scene. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. That scene's awesome. I used to make fun of it almost, but now I was like, yeah, that's awesome. That's worth the wait,
But it's almost like I'm not going to say it's forgotten, but I don't think it's talked about much anymore, especially because it's its 30th anniversary this year.
Yeah, and for as well loved as that movie was when it came out, and not to generalize, but women especially seemed to really like it. Like, I feel like it had a bit of the Titanic vibe before Titanic, I can see that. Yeah, I knew a lot of women who really liked it and were raving about it, and were in love with Daniel Day-Lewis and thought it was super romantic and all of this stuff. And it does seem to have kind of fallen off the pop culture radar a little bit. I mean, I think it's a well-respected film, but it's not one that you hear coming up in conversation all that often, which is surprising because it was very, very popular when it came out. So I don't know why that is. I think it holds up really well.
Yeah, and it's directed by Michael Mann as well. So
right, which is actually one of the biggest faults with. Not really. I'm not a huge Michael Mann fan because I think he's way too serious of a filmmaker. This movie, the seriousness works because it's a serious story. I feel like some of his other movies could use a little more humor than they have.
Very true. Yeah, I do remember there's some quite brutal scenes as well. Some of the battle scenes, fight scenes.
Yeah, there's a few scalpings in this movie that are not too fun to watch, but they're not overly gruesome either, which I respected. Like, they're a little bit bloody, but they're over quick, and it's not like he doesn't linger on it. So I respect that about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we get into our endings then?
Let's do it.
Who's kicking off tonight? You or me? Well, let me tell the story first, I guess. Well, you tell me who's kicking off tonight.
Well, you tell the story, then I'll go first.
Okay, that sounds fair. All right, so here's what we got. The Last of the Mohicans from 1992, directed by Michael Mann, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Madeline Stowe, Russell Means, and Wes Studi. So, in 1757, the French and Indian War is raging in America. A small Mohawk Indian family includes wise old Chingachgook, his son Uncas, and his adopted son Hawkeye, who is a white man that was adopted by the Mohawks when his family was killed as a baby. When he was a baby. British soldier Major Hayward and his troops are moving from Albany to Fort Edward. They're attacked by Huron Indians led by Magua, who had been acting as a guide for the English but then betrayed them. Hawkeye and his family stumble across this attack. They save the major and civilians Alice and Cora Monroe, sisters, and help them arrive safely at the fort under the command of Alice and Cora's father, Colonel Monroe. Along the way, and after they're fought a bit, Cora and Hawkeye fall in love. very passionately. But the fort is under siege by the French and the Huron Indians, and the English eventually surrender, but are allowed to leave the fort. But Magua, who's just not a good dude, he betrays the English again, has the Huron tribe attack them all, kills most all of the English soldiers and people from the fort, and Hawkeye and his family escape, but Cora, Alice, and Major Hayward are captured. At the Huron camp, Hawkeye and Hayward bargain for the lives of the women, and Major Hayward is burned alive as part of that. Yeesh. Magua takes Alice to be his wife, and the Uncas had kind of fallen in love with Alice, and she kind of fallen in love with Uncas, so they're not happy about that. So they set off after them to rescue Alice, and in the resulting battle, Uncas is killed, and Magua, the bad guy, are killed. And Alice realizes Uncas is dead. She kills herself by jumping off a mountain. Yeesh. So the film ends with just Hawkeye, Chingachgook, and Cora still alive, hopeful but wary of what the future holds. And that's the nutshell version of The Last of the Mohicans. A lot going on there. I thought I could boil it down a little simpler. Like, I'm like, yeah, Indian, American, British, whatever. She falls in love at the end. And it was like, no, there's a lot more than that.
Definitely, yeah. Lots of double crossing, lots of chasing around, different characters, lots of battles. I like the fact, though, main characters die, and it's very sudden and quick.
Right, absolutely.
You don't get that enough in some stories, I think. Sometimes people have plot armor too much in many films.
Yeah, I agree. But let's hear what you've got then for now. This is based on the famous novel. I want to say Fenimore Cooper, but maybe I'm making that up. It might be somebody else.
James Fenimore
Cooper. Look at me. All right. But there's never a novel sequel that I'm aware of. Maybe there was. I don't know. There was never a movie sequel, though. So let's find out what happens after the ending of The Last of the Mohicans.
Okay. This is what I think happens. And apologies for any mispronunciations of names, especially, I think you got it right. What is it? Chingachgook?
Chingachgook. But it's hard to say. And I only got that because I watched it. And every time they would say it, I was like, how do you say that? So don't worry if you mess it up.
Okay. Chingachgook, Hawkeye, and Cora spend the next few years traveling around the Adirondacks and the surrounding area. Hawkeye and Cora have a child, which they name, which they name after Uncas. That's it. Yes, I don't know why I didn't write down, but they have a child and call him Uncas. And Chingachgook is overjoyed. They then build a more permanent home, so there's somewhere safe for Uncas to grow. While out hunting one day, though, Hawkeye finds some animals that have died. There's no wounds on them. They appear to have been poisoned. And using his tracking skills, it leads him to a landscape which has been devastated. Streams run black and trees are being torn down. And he chases it back to an almost fortress-like mining outpost. Hawkeye sees other Native Americans and people of other races being kept prisoners to work in the mine. He also sees animals such as elephants and things being used to pull the various rocks and things from the mine, and the smoke pouring. It's just basically destroying the natural environment. Hawkeye, though, is very surprised as he's scouting this area and looking around, when suddenly standing next to him is a tall Englishman in a suit and jacket and everything, just standing next to him. He hadn't heard him approach. Wary of the newcomer, Hawkeye goes for his knife. "No need for that," said the man. "We're both here for the same reason." He nods over to the mine. "Those damnable miners took some of my friends and family to work the mine. My name's John Clayton, and I plan on getting them all back. Are you with me?" After a bit more talking, Hawkeye agrees, and they spend the next few days watching the outpost and working out patrols. Every now and again, Hawkeye hears something in the forest around him, can never quite catch an eye what it is, and John Clayton disappears on occasion, and he can't work out what's going on. But eventually it was time to put their rescue plan into motion. When this is decided, Hawkeye was surprised to see Clayton stripped down to just a loincloth. He was even more surprised when a chimpanzee walks out of the forest and hands Clayton a set of keys, which are obviously used for some locks in the mining area. "Thank you, old friend," said Clayton to the chimpanzee. "Shall we have at it then?" he says to Hawkeye. "Who exactly are you?" says Hawkeye. "Call me Tarzan." And away they go.
Very nicely done. I like that a lot. It took me a minute. I wasn't sure you were going with that. When you mentioned like the Englishman who just sort of appeared wearing a suit, I thought maybe it was like a Doctor Who thing. You know,
Ooh, that would have been good as well.
the way
Yeah.
you had sort of set that up, I was like, the way he kind of appeared, I was like, is he Doctor Who? But then you said John Clayton, and then it took me a second because I'm like, I know that name. Where do I know that name? And but very quickly I twigged onto the fact that it was Tarzan, and
Yeah.
I
didn't want
recognize, I
to.
remember where I knew it.
I could see your mind working, but didn't want to.
Yeah. I was definitely putting it together in my head. I was like, I know where this is going, but I got to get there. It's taken me a few steps, so
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
Oh, thank you. I just thought if anyone could sneak up on Hawkeye, it would be Tarzan, because
That makes total sense. That's what I like about it, because he was sort of the quintessential like hunter tracker, like that kind of guy. So, but I love the idea of a team up between Hawkeye and Tarzan.
No,
So,
I love all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
But
very cool.
That was my after the ending.
Excellent. I like it. Nice job. All right, so I guess it's my turn then.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, here we go. It starts off a little similar, but then it goes in a completely different direction. So once things settle down, Hawkeye and Korra decide to face the future together. They bid farewell to Chingachgook and make their way west towards the border town of Buffalo in New York. They know it'll be hard to find a place where their love will be accepted by the people around them, so they travel from town to town and state to state for a while. Hawkeye's a great provider, and their love deepens with every passing day. But before long, Korra is with child, and they know they will need to settle down before the winter. Choosing a small plot of land in southern New York and using the money Korra received from her father's inheritance, they build a house and settle in for the winter. The following spring, Korra gives birth to a son who they name Barton Monroe. Almost 20 years pass, and Barton is now 18, a man. He's been raised in both worlds, that of the white man and that of the Mohawk. When a revolution starts to brew in the United States, Korra and Hawkeye recognize that Barton will probably be conscripted into service. But Hawkeye has taught him the ways of the Mohawk well, and Barton is a natural with a bow and arrow, so he makes it through the Revolutionary War unscathed. Korra and Hawkeye live into their 80s and die peacefully in their sleep within hours of each other. That's the end. But as you know, I'm wont to do sometimes, there's an after the credits scene.
Okay.
So we fade to black, go to the credits. Credits end, we fade up. Barton is now married. It's a few years later. His wife is giving birth. While childbirth is painful, as I imagine they all were back then, his wife makes it through and welcomes a new baby into the world. This leads us into a montage of mothers giving birth over the next 200 years, once every generation, every 20 years or so, until we come to the most recent mother giving birth in modern times. The nurse hands the baby to the young woman and says, "Here he is. He's beautiful. Have you thought of a name yet?" "Clint," the mother replies. "I think that has a nice ring to it. Clint Barton." And we fade to black.
Excellent. Oh, I did like that. When you told Barton. Yeah, when you mentioned Barton, I was going, that's the same. Yeah.
Right. Well, it started off as a tribute. I thought like, okay, Clint Barton is Hawkeye, and this is the original Hawkeye. And I thought, oh, it's kind of fun. I think Barton's kind of a cool name. Like I thought that'd be a fun little tribute. But then I was like, but I feel like it'd be cool if Hawkeye, the Marvel character, was a descendant of the original Hawkeye. So I was like, how can I work that out? So that's when the after credit scene came to me. So my original intention was just a little tribute to the Marvel Hawkeye, but then I thought it'd be fun to play with it a bit.
Oh, I like that a lot. But I liked the fact that Hawkeye and Korra had that good life together.
Well, yeah, thanks. I thought, while it is an action adventure movie, I also think that, as I mentioned earlier, part of the reason why it resonated so much with women was there is this very like deep romance in it, and I thought, I want to make sure I like to, me, I'm a romantic. I like to carry that through. So I thought I like the idea of them living into their 80s, back in Revolutionary War times, probably unrealistic, but,
yeah.
Whatever. It's all fictional. It's my ending. What the hell? They're gonna live into their 80s.
And it's nice of them after all the adventure, but all the strife and the stress they went through in their early life. It'd be nice for them to have that kind of life.
Yeah, I figure. Me. I like a happy ending. So
brilliant.
What's that?
That was brilliant. I liked it a lot. It's good.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, so there you go. That wraps up our endings for The Last of the Mohicans. Let us know what you think of Last of the Mohicans and our endings in the comments, either here live or wherever you're watching / listening to this episode at a later date. But for now, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is Juggernaut movie franchises. The fall of the Juggernaut movie. No, not really. That might be too much hyperbole, but I guess I'll kick off this part just to sort of explain where we're at, Phil, because this is sort of something we were trying to think of something to talk about. We weren't having any good ideas, and then I said, well, what if we talk about, because I went and saw Morbius this week, and I said, what if we use Morbius as like a kicking off point? And this is spoiler free. Anybody who's just joining us now, we're not talking about Morbius per se, but I said, what if we sort of use that as a kicking off point to talk about these like Juggernaut film franchises and sort of like the inevitability of the fact that, it's impossible to have these ongoing film franchises and never have a dud film, right? And like, Spider-Man No Way Home just grossed like $2 billion worldwide. And now we have Morbius, which is in the same Spider-Man universe. And, it opened to like $40 million, which is respectable, but it's clearly not going to be a humongous, it's not a Venom-sized hit, So I said, well, let's talk about sort of like, these franchises, Marvel, Star Wars, these types of things. And what happens when we sort of get these inevitable disappointments, if you will. So that was sort of the genesis of our conversation. So Phil, what did you want to start us off with some thoughts, some general thoughts, maybe?
Well, there's all, I just say there's lots of film series which have just gone on and on. There's often like a bad one, but thinking about the box office, I mean, we've got with Star Wars, you mentioned, even the ones which are divisive, like The Last Jedi, they still made an awful lot of money. So some of them can still be hugely successful, even though not everybody particularly likes them. But then you do have, because even Morbius, it's doing okay at the box office. It's not doing anything great, but critics are slamming it. But it seems like people are still going to see it, which is surprising when you read some of the reviews. But I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I can't really comment on it. But I mean, even with like the long running ones, sometimes you can have a dud, but it still carries on and find its feet. Because I mean, you got Marvel, which is still doing really well. But then you had like things with Thor 2: The Dark World. That's considered like one of the first ones, which wasn't quite as good as the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
But you just look and it still carried on and still did amazing things. And go on rewatches of Thor 2, it wasn't quite as bad as I remembered.
Right.
So it's even the bad ones on some of these franchises can still be pretty good, or at least okay.
Right.
There's not many which have actually just totally sunk a franchise from what I can think of.
Right. I think most franchises are the big ones like that are popular enough that people can forgive kind of a misstep, and they're not going to be like, well, that's it. Now Marvel is dead to me, or James Bond is dead to me, or Star Wars is dead to me because one film wasn't that good. I think you'd have to put out 3 or 4 bad ones in a row to really start losing people. But, I do think it's interesting. I have seen Morbius, I will say, and again, spoiler free, but I liked it. It's not a great film. It's not like, oh, this is an amazing film, but I took my teenage daughter. We both thought it was like a perfectly enjoyable movie. It's low stakes. It's a very small story about this one character. There's not a lot of big stuff happening in it. It's an origin story. But it's not like, it's not a masterpiece. But Jared Leto is really good in it. All the supporting cast is good. It does have some cool visuals and a few decent action scenes. It's just like a solid film. You know what I mean? It's like a B, maybe a B- or a B+, depending on how you feel that day, but it's that kind of movie. And when I say a B movie, I don't mean a B movie like the traditional, like cheesy, cheap, kind of films. I just mean like I give it a B, 3 stars, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you look at it from this franchise point of view, again, Sony, it is the Sony effect, like you said, in that Sony films, the Sony Marvel stuff isn't as good as the Marvel stuff. But, I think what I've always kind of considered was like, even when Disney, bought Star Wars and started putting out Star Wars films, and the first few were great because, like, Force Awakens I absolutely love. Rogue One is a masterpiece, and it seemed like, oh my gosh, they can do no wrong. And then The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker came out and proved that wasn't the case. But even at the time, I was like, people were excited, and I was like, we have to look at this and recognize that at some point, if they just make an infinite number of Star Wars movies, right, at some point there's going to be a bad one. There's going to be one that's disappointing. And Marvel's the same thing, right? I don't think Marvel proper studios has made an out and out terrible film, right? But if they keep putting out 3 movies a year, or 2 or 3, however many you want to look at, there's going to be one eventually that's just going to be awful. You know what I mean? Maybe not. But law of averages says it'll probably happen, and for my money, I think there have been a couple that were in recent years, a little less awesome than some of their earlier ones, for my money. I thought both Black Widow and Shang-Chi were both good films,
Yeah.
but maybe a little underwhelming. Neither one of them like blew me away. I didn't leave the theater being like, I can't wait to watch that again. I like them. I don't dislike them. But I certainly would be like, okay, maybe the sheen is a little less, or maybe maybe they're not quite at the level that they were at when they were in the midst of like the Avengers, and stuff like that. So, it's bound to happen, right? So what happens then, I guess, is the question. How do they respond to it?
Yeah, well, the case of like the Mission Impossible films, Mission Impossible 2, that was kind of a bit of a dud.
It's the low point in the franchise,
Yeah.
hands down.
Yeah. I remember Mission Impossible 3 got a bit slated as well, even though I really like it. But
Yeah,
I think Mission Impossible 2, the reaction to that, they took a good long hard look at it and then retooled it with Mission Impossible 3, and then they learned from that as well, and they've constantly just changed things just a little bit until they found this formula now, which has just been. It's one of the few blockbuster ones where you got like Tom Cruise. You've still got one of the few movie stars who can still open a movie like that. A big name can do that, and it's just they took the opportunity instead of just doubling down on it and going, well, no, we're right. We're going to keep doing this. The audience don't know what they're talking about. They sort of went, well, the audience didn't enjoy that as much, and so let's just take a break and let's just see what we can do. And that seemed to work well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually look at Mission Impossible as a franchise as a little bit similar to, and bear with me on this, Fast and Furious franchise.
Oh no, I can see that. Yeah.
Because they sort of reinvented Mission Impossible after the third film a little bit. Like there's a very distinct tonal shift between the first three Mission Impossibles, of which I really like the first and the third one, and Mission Impossible 4, 5, and 6, which kind of have like a little bit of a narrative through line and some new characters, and they build off of the marriage in the third one, and it's like there's a really distinct kind of vibe difference between 1 through 3 and 4 through 6. And 4 through 6 I think are the best films in the franchise, and they're the ones that I think really sort of have a very clear connective tissue, whereas the first 3 kind of feel like 3 separate movies.
Yeah.
And that's to me very similar of like Fast and the Furious, where 1 through 4 are kind of much smaller. I mean, they're all loud car movies, but they're much smaller group of characters, and then 5 through 9 became these like world globe-trotting super spy adventures, whereas the first 4 are much more about like car racing and car thieves. So I feel like that's the kind of where those two franchises kind of meld a little bit or cross lines. But even in those franchises, I mean, we've got another Mission Impossible coming. Hopefully it'll be great. But for Fast and the Furious, now how I feel about those movies.
Yeah.
And the latest one I enjoyed, but it certainly wasn't as good as the couple before that. Doesn't mean I'm gonna stop watching them, obviously. But so I guess the formula is how much goodwill do you build up in your audience before you hit a dud, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough, then you got to work really hard to get them back, I feel like.
Yeah, I think you do have to like they've done with Fast and Furious and Mission Impossible and some others. Where they've listened to the fans and this, and they're not taking notes and say, well, they're not being ruled by the fans, but they're going, well, we know this works. We know people like this. Let's keep doing this, but tweak it every now and again. I think as long as they do that, then they can, as long as they keep the fans' goodwill, and that will work. Sometimes though, when they just keep going, well, no, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. The fans don't know what they're talking about. We're going to do because I think sometimes, and it's not even just in films, when some things they forget that it's the fans and who are the ones which make these things possible. I know they make them and stuff, but if the fans don't come, especially with a long running series, if the fans don't keep coming back, then you're not going to keep getting the money to make these films. So you need to make sure, I'm not talking about pandering to the fans, but just making sure that it's something which the fans want to see, but every now and again change it a little bit, just so it doesn't become boring and monotonous, but just to see if that works, and then just take a good note on that. But it's like with the James Bond films. Sometimes, I mean, they've constantly sort of changed. They keep the same basic through line, but they change every. They just follow the flow of the zeitgeist often with the way the tone of the film as well. More recently, it's been more realistic, less gadgets. But then there was Roger Moore, which was more gadgets, more humor, things like that. Yeah. It's just this constant flow. As long as you're aware of what's going on in the world outside and what the people who enjoy these films are doing, then yeah, I think you're onto a winner. You can have some duds, but you can course correct.
Right.
But,
yeah. I mean, I think there's something to be said for listening to the fans. I feel like sometimes the studios that double down on things, I feel like Star Wars does that sometimes. They don't always give the fans what they want, and it's like, what, the fans are happier when they give us what we want, and then you make more money typically. You know what I mean? Force Awakens, was huge Juggernaut because it brought back the legacy characters that we all wanted to see, right? And Rogue One, worked really well. It had a tie into the original film, but then you look at something like Solo, which I like. Solo, a Star Wars story. I think it's a perfectly fine film. It's very enjoyable to me. It's not nearly as bad as a lot of people say it was, but nobody really wanted a young Han Solo story, and it was kind of like they were like, well, we're going to do it because we want to do a young Han Solo story because we think we can make another franchise out of it. But it's like, yeah, but if you'd made a Boba Fett movie like everybody on the planet seemed to want, like you would have made 3 times as much money. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like, what, just maybe once in a while, just listen to the fans and give them what they want and be done with it. You know what I mean? Because sometimes they know better, almost. Yeah,
but then you have films like the Terminator series, which just keeps trying.
Yeah, but see, I like the later Terminator sequels more than most people, and I think Terminator Dark Fate is the best film since the second one. So like, and that's and now again in Terminator Dark Fate, they gave us what we wanted, right? They brought back the characters that we wanted, and I think it's the best one since the second film. Now, I honestly believe it's a really great film, but can I deny that part of that probably comes from the fact that they brought back what I wanted to see and gave me the movie I wanted to see? I mean, it's obviously that must have been a part of it, right? So and that's again, I mean.
You have a good point though as well, because even the duds the lousy film in a series, it's still going to have there's still going to be fans for it who then go, no, I really like that though, I want more of that. Right. So it's, I suppose it does come down to which group of fans can. It's a balancing act. It's a crazy balancing act, and
and I don't
it's
think
amazing we have so many film series which do continue.
Right. I'm not saying you should just do whatever the fans want, like take a poll and write the film by committee. I just think sometimes it's kind of like, well, you can read the room and sort of get a sense of what fans want, and then you're like, nope, not doing that. It's like, well, okay, why does that make sense? Like Fast and Furious, the fans want to see the family, and they want this big across the world stuff. Like, so they're digging into that, they're doubling down on that, and people love it, and they keep making tons of money, like that works, so yeah, I think so. I think most of these franchises can survive a dud or two, but I think they have to be careful not to hit too many bad notes in a row, and they'll be just fine.
Yeah, I think Warner Brothers really need to work on their.
Yeah, that's why some of those DC movies didn't make money, right? Batman versus Superman should have been the biggest movie in the world, but it wasn't because they had too many bad ones in a row. Now they're starting to come out of it a little bit, but you can, it took a while for them to really start getting some of those hits back. So they definitely were on the precipice, I think.
That's definitely true. Yeah. But,
cool.
No, I think, so any viewers out there, let us know what you think of films which have sort of derailed franchises or been a bit of a dud. Which duds do you like that you can't understand what the people don't like?
And which franchises have you given up on because maybe you don't like? Let's hear about that as well. So definitely share your thoughts and let us know what you think. All right, very cool. So let's move on then to our top 5 list, because I'm excited to get to this one, because we all know I love things blowing up in movies. I love movies where stuff blows up. I'm a simple man. What can I say? Fast and Furious movies, right? So our top 5 today is the top 5 coolest explosions in movie history, or at least in, relatively movie history. I don't know if it's every single movie ever. I don't know if any of us dove deep into every action movie ever created, but top 5 coolest explosions. So Phil, as always, I'll ask, did you have any criteria for your list?
Well, I was going with ones that I really like. One which I decided to go because I was going, well, what about the scene in Scanners where the head explodes? But I was going, no, because that's cool. That's cool, and probably could be on lots of lists. But then I thought, no, let's have a proper just explosions where things go.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good criteria.
I don't necessarily have to be like huge, big explosions, but as long as it's something with explosions going boom.
Yeah.
What about you?
Very similar. I mostly just went for the ones I like the best. I did also focus on like big explosiony things, not like you said, like people's heads blowing up, stuff like that. Originally, I sort of started to think like maybe I'll only do, just for my own personal gratification, I'll only do things that were done like practically, not like through special effects where like things were really blown up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but that went away because it left out some explosions that I thought were really awesome. Several of mine are pretty big, but some of them are less big but more impactful. So ultimately, my criteria was saying kind of just had to be really cool, had to be something that resonated with me for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. I also think it's going to be one of those lists where one of us might mention something and the other one goes, "Oh no, yeah, that should have been on my list," and things like that.
Yeah,
And
probably.
also one which could have a different, there could be different films in it depending upon the day or what I've watched and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely, I have some on my list that are kind of like not, that didn't make it into my final top 5, but could in a different day if I'd watched the movie more recently, or
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that. So, all right. Well, I guess I should start since you started the last, the after the endings.
That's right. Yeah. So you kick things off.
All right, so our top 5 movie explosions. What are the coolest explosions on film? That's what we're talking about today. My number 5 is Terminator 2, and it is the Cyberdyne building exploding. You know,
Good one.
it's they're kind of under siege by all of the police, and they're trapped and they get out, this and that, and then they blow up the whole building. And it's James Cameron, and I love the way it's shot with the multiple angles. They blew up a real building that was scheduled for demolition, so I like that. I do tend to prefer practical explosions where things really blow up. And it's just because that's a movie that was such an indelible part of my teenage years, and I saw that movie 5 times in theaters. It just is one that the minute I thought of like cool explosions, I was like, well, that's the first one that came to mind, just because that's one that just resonates with me so well. So I'm sure you all know it's the big kind of black glass squarish building, and it just, the whole top part of it just blows out, and we see it from all these different angles, and cops are running everywhere and cars are exploding with it and everything, and it's just great and it's fun and I love it. So that's my number 5, Terminator 2, the explosion of the Cyberdyne building.
Excellent. It's didn't quite make my list, but it was in contention for a while.
There you go.
It is a very good explosion. Like you say, the ones where they do actually blow something up for real makes all the difference. My number 5 is Die Hard. The first Die Hard film. On the top where he's where they end up blowing, when you do find out partway through that they've been setting explosives, and then eventually when they do blow the top of the building, as John McClane's leaping off there, and it's just that's just a huge explosion. You see it from a few angles as well, but it's a big explosion in the middle of the city. Just looks amazing on the big screen. Watched it over in December for no reason, but it's just, even now it still works well, and just it's the impact as well. Just seeing Bruce Willis just leaping down with that behind him, the silhouette of him, it's amazing. That's my number 5.
Great choice. It was on my short list, and just I couldn't even tell you why I picked certain ones over other ones, because now once you said that, I was like, oh, I should have put that on my list, but it didn't make it. But it was on my short list. So it would definitely be in my honorable mentions. So my number 4 is probably the most obscure one on the list. Not obscure, maybe isn't the right word, but probably the least known explosion. And the only reason it probably made my list is because I just watched this movie like a week ago. So there's a little bit of recency bias, but I was so impressed with it. It's Blown Away, the movie Blown Away, with Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones. It's from the late 90s, I want to say.
I've not seen that in such a long time, but a friend of mine watched it the other week and sent me a photo from it, and I went, oh my God, they're so young in it.
I know. It's a really good movie. It holds up quite well. It's about this Irish bomber guy who wants revenge on Jeff Bridges, and Tommy Lee Jones plays him, and he keeps blowing people up on the bomb squad because Jeff Bridges is on the bomb squad, so on and so forth. But in the climax of the movie, spoiler alert, I guess, for a 30-year-old movie or whatever, 25-year-old movie. At the climax of the movie, they're on this there's this I guess it's like a casino ship. So it's not like a full-on cruise ship, but it's like one of these like giant, kind of bigger than like a barge, but smaller than a cruise ship. It's a pretty big ship, and it's like this dilapidated old thing on this like old docks in like Boston. And it's like kind of leaning, but it's a big ship, and it gets blown up in it, and it was a practical explosion. And I was watching this film, and I was like, that is the coolest explosion I've ever seen. Like, it blows up kind of like in sequence, so it's like, because of the way the bombs are, so it kind of blows up like one section at a time until the whole thing is blown up, and it is massive. I mean, they must have blown out windows in nearby neighborhoods because it is huge, and it is all done practically. The only kind of complaint that I have from the scene is that, like, the two guys running away from it don't jump it off the docks into the water until after the whole thing is blown up, and you're like, well, at that point, why'd you even bother jumping? So you're kind of like, you should have jumped when it first exploded, and the explosion knocked you in. But it looks really, really cool, and it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those ones that really makes you appreciate great pyrotechnic work, because I was just sat there like enraptured. I rewound it to watch it again because it's just so cool looking to watch this whole giant ship just explode and be done, like I said, all practically. It was really cool. So it's blown away against a late 90s action movie, really good. And it's the ship called the Dolphin, and that's the scene that makes my number 4.
Cool. I need to watch that again. I remember I enjoyed that when I first saw it, but
it's good. It holds up really well.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Oh, so many films to rewatch. Can't wait.
I know.
Okay, well, my number 4, is it's 2 films, one from 1969 and one from 1957.
Wow.
So I'll go year order. 1957, The Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yes.
Alec Guinness, William Holden, Jack Hawkins, some prisoner of wars building a bridge over the River Kwai, and then they realize they want to blow it up because it will help stop enemy movements. And then it's basically near the end of the film. Spoiler alert: they blow it up. Yeah. But they built the bridge. They built it for the film, and then they blew it up for the film. But it's a huge explosion. You just see it go flying everywhere. They had lots of camera set up and everything. And Alec Guinness's performance is just stunning. It's a great explosion. Great film, worth watching if you haven't seen it. And the 1969 film is The Italian Job, starring Michael Caine, and it's a smaller explosion, but it's when they're getting ready. They're working out how to do the robbery of these trucks in Italy, but they're still back in England. And it's when they get one of the trucks, and they're trying to work out how much explosive to use to open it. And they use too much explosives, it blows up the truck, and then you get Michael Caine's immortal lines. I only suppose the bloody doors off. That was a dreadful impression. Don't know what happened there, but that's the explosion is pretty cool anyway. But it's with that line that Michael Caine gives afterwards. It's very funny, and that's a good point. But that's my number 4.
Excellent choice. Love Bridge on the River Kwai. I love that explosion. It, again, was on my short list. Didn't make the final cut. I've actually never seen the original Italian Job. I've only seen the remake.
Oh, okay.
So that is a hole in my filmography that I have to now watch. It's been on my list, but I'll try and watch it sooner than later. My number 3 is where I realized I would not be able to stick with just practical explosions, and I'd have to go for some special effects explosions as well. And it is from The Matrix, and it is the helicopter slamming into the skyscraper and exploding, because damn if that's not the coolest explosion ever, because it's not just an explosion. It's like it's in the Matrix. So first the helicopter crashes into the side of the building, and all of the windows ripple out from that, right? Which is just so cool. And then it blows up, and you see Trinity and Neo like swinging away from it as the building explodes behind them and the glass shatters everywhere. It's just such a great visual. It's not the biggest explosion on my list. It's not the most famous explosion on my list, but man, like, because that movie was so mind-blowing when it came out, and that scene with the way they did the special effects for that to work that all out, it's hands down the coolest of the explosions in my opinion. Like it's number 3 on my list because there was a couple explosions I felt were more like, momentous or more important to mention, but as far as just hands down cool, that one takes the cake in my opinion. So that's my number 3, The Matrix, the helicopter explosion, the special effects, the way it worked all together. I love it. Yeah,
an excellent choice. Almost made my list as well, but it's that is a good one. I do like that. Okay, cool. My number 3 is from 1997's The Fifth Element, and it's the one near the end when there's a time bomb, which means keeps ticking down, and it's on the Flotsam Jetson, the big space hotel.
Floston Space, something like that. Isn't that what it is?
It's Flots. Anyway, it's on the big ship, with the opera singer is. But there's a bomb that's counting down. Eventually, it's the second Bruce Willis film as well on the list. But they eventually switch off stop the timer. But then one of the bad guys who's dying sets it off, and everything goes boom. And by boom, I do mean boom. It's a huge explosion. It looks incredible on the scene. And then at the time, it was the largest indoor explosion I don't think it was planned to be. I think it was a lot bigger than they wanted it to be, because it was a bit controversial, because it could have really caused some tremendous harm and damage to. But luckily, it was controlled. But I think it was larger than expected. But it looks amazing on screen. You do need some of these practical effects to just make things really just meld everything together. But in a film full of amazing effects and things and scenery, but that's just a great moment near the end of the film as well. But that's just one of those explosions which always stuck with me.
Yeah, for sure. So I checked it while you're talking, and we were both wrong. But I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit closer than you. It's Fhloston Paradise.
Fhloston Paradise. That's it. Yeah.
Yes. So I thought Fhloston Space, which I thought seemed a little too on the nose, was Fhloston Paradise is the name of the ship. So
there we go.
All right. But good choice. Good choice. That one I did not think of, to be honest with you. So that wasn't on my list, but that is a good choice. So I like it.
Well, I was reminded by my friend Andy, who's a huge fan of The Fifth Element.
I know that movie has its diehard fans for sure. So we ever do a Fifth Element after? I feel like we must have done a Fifth Element after.
I think we have, yeah.
I think so too. All right. My number 2 will probably not be on your list, but that's okay. Maybe it will. I don't know, because I think maybe you like the explosion better than the movie. But it is, I believe, to date, the largest explosion ever filmed. It holds the world record. It is from the movie Spectre, James Bond Spectre, and it is the Spectre compound in Morocco. And not only is it a massive, awesome explosion, but it was filmed practically, and the way the shot is framed, it starts off with kind of like James Bond and the girl whose name escapes me at the moment, with the kind of the one big explosion behind them, and then it kind of pans back and you see the whole complex. It's kind of a big circular complex, like exploding building by building. It zooms out, and the two of them are standing there kind of watching it from like not an overpass, but like, a higher ground type of thing. And you just see it, the scope and the size of it get bigger and bigger as it goes. It's really, really cool looking. I remember when I rewatched Spectre a year or two ago, and I was like, wow, I forgot about that, but that's a really kick-ass explosion. And then I was looking up this list, and I found out it broke some Michael Bay record. I think maybe Pearl Harbor for the biggest explosion ever filmed, and I believe it still stands as the largest. I don't know what they measure that by, megatons or size or what, but whatever it was, it's a big explosion, and I think it looks really, really cool, and I love the cinematography of it and the way the shot is framed. So that's my number 2, Spectre, the Spectre compound in Morocco, from the James Bond franchise, of course, with Daniel Craig. That's my number 2.
Good call. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that explosion, but yeah, I remember the one you mean. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I just checked as well while you're doing that. We did go after the ending of The Fifth Element back in episode 42.
There you go. And that's another reason why I can't change the numbering of our episodes, because now it wouldn't be number 42 anymore. So there we go.
Okay. My number 2 is 2008's The Dark Knight. And it's the scene where the Joker sets off the hospital explosion. Again, they really blew up the building, but I love Heath Ledger's performance as well, where he's trying to, he's using the detonator and it doesn't go off straight away, and then eventually it just goes boom. But it's a huge explosion, again, seen from different angles, and just things are flying through the air. Looks amazing. It's got a bit of a comedy element to it. Just fits the style and tone of the film really well. That's my number 2.
Yeah, that's a great choice, and it was also on my short list. And again, a movie I just rewatched a couple of weeks ago. I feel like maybe that's where I came up with this top 5 list, because I've watched a lot of movies recently that have big explosions.
Yeah.
Although, well, it was blown away was the moment when I thought of it. When I watched that explosion, I was like, that was so cool. And I was like, that's so cool. We could rank it. That's where I got the idea for this list specifically. But I have obviously watched a lot of movies because I just watched that one. But I think that's a great choice. And it was on my short list, like I said, really close to making it on the final, but I did leave it off. So, all right, that brings us to my number 1, which is not the coolest explosion on the list. It's not the biggest explosion on the list. It's not the most amazing explosion on the list. It's not the most anything on the list, except for this. I think it's the most iconic explosion on the list.
Okay.
It is the destruction of the White House from Independence Day. Because I think when you think of explosions in movies, that's got to be one of the most famous and well-loved of all time. Like, that's the one you see in like movie montages of like anything. If you're going to see an action movie montage, it's going to be that shot. If you're going to see a science fiction montage, it's that shot. If it's movies of the 90s, it's that shot. Like, you know what I mean? Like that, I feel like that explosion of that giant alien ship, you know, people forget nowadays, it's easy to forget, but Independence Day was a huge phenomenon back in the day. It was a
Yeah,
monstrous
yeah,
box office hit that was like everybody was talking about it. It was on, you know, it was the pop culture moment, you know, and that scene of that giant big round alien ship shooting down that beam and the White House blowing into smithereens. Like, I just feel like there are a few explosions in film history more famous than that. I can think of one or two that didn't really go on my list for that one, but that's just such a like, because, you know, I think up until then the White House had been kind of sacred in films. I don't remember anybody
yeah.
ever doing anything like that before. Now it's been
I
done a
think you're
bunch of
right.
times. That was the one. It was kind of like, whoa, I can't believe they blew up the White House, and it was in all the trailers and all of that stuff. And I feel like even if you're not American, right, like it's still an iconic location that everyone knows, and it's an iconic scene of it getting blown up. And to me, that's the one that kind of just stood out as like, when I was looking at the list, like I said, it's not necessarily my favorite explosion or the coolest one, but I was kind of like, it's just got to be number one, because it's like that's the one everyone just sees it and goes, yep, Independence Day, I know it, I know that scene. So that's my number one, the blowing up of
That's
the White
good
House.
call. It was a good
Thank
call.
you.
It was on my short list for a while, didn't make it, but yeah, it's because it's a great scene as well. It's a great explosion.
Yep.
As you say, iconic building. It also just shows, you know, just how powerful these aliens are, because for a long time the White House in America was seen as like, you know, one of the biggest world powers, and that was a good symbol of it. And just
Right.
as you said, it was always untouched, really, wasn't it? The White House in films
Yeah.
before then.
Yeah.
Good call. I'm glad it made your list. I was thinking about putting it on mine, but didn't quite make it. But
Sure.
my number one is from 1979. It's Apocalypse Now. And it's because
Okay.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It's Robert
Right.
Duvall calls in a napalm
Yep.
raid, and you just you see them all, his soldiers surfing on the river, and you see the jets come flying in, and they really did blow up a big, huge chunk of
Yeah.
jungle. Because if you haven't seen the documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now, go see it, even if you're not a fan of the film. But it's just crazy the amount of practical stuff they did on that film, and how close. Well, there were some bad things did happen to some people on there, but this one is just an incredible explosion, just iconic. It looks amazing on the big screen.
Yeah.
And it's just my number one, because it just, even now, it just blows me away. No pun intended. When you see it, and also because I've recently got sent the new Godfather trilogy 4K, so it's a bit of a Francis Ford Coppola in my mind.
Sure,
But that's
sure.
my number one, the napalm scene in Apocalypse Now.
That's a great choice. I mean, with the music and everything too, you know, and like, I mean, that's an awesome scene. Like you said, it is big, it is huge. It is, when you see it on the big screen, I imagine, I haven't seen it on the big screen. I've seen it on my big screen TV, but not in theater.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So excellent choice. You know, what's interesting, I don't know, I don't know if I expected it, but I'm a little surprised that for as often as we put these movies on lists or things like that, that neither of us put the Death Star blowing up from Star Wars.
I was talking about that today.
Yeah.
I was talking about the list, and I was going,
Yeah.
should I put it on? I don't know, but it's just, I don't know if it's just because it's just so ingrained.
Yeah, or I don't know if it's like it maybe suffers a little bit. I know they enhanced it for the special edition, but like it's a cool explosion in the original film, but it's not the greatest effect in that movie. Like, it's kind of clearly a model. It's not the biggest explosion in the world. It's just like a normal sort of explosion. Like, you know what I mean? It didn't really jump out at me as far as being like, you know, top 5 worthy necessarily.
Yeah.
So,
it's
but certainly an honorable mention.
Yeah, definitely, but it's just probably been surpassed by other effects.
I guess I thought the reason I bring it up is only because I was kind of like, well, I'm not gonna put it on, but I bet Phil will, so it'll still get in there. And then you didn't put it on either. I was like, all right, well, you know, can't win them all.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah,
but
that's a good one now. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. What's your favorite explosions anyway? There's so many more out there. When I was putting this list together, there's so many, and I kept thinking about them. There's probably more. I was thinking about Iron Man as well, where this in the first one, where, you know, he fires the missile at the tank and he turns away and walks, and that's a
right. That is awesome.
That could be another list, couldn't it? When people walking away from explosions.
Walking away from explosions could totally be a separate list, because that's a whole different kind of, because the explosions themselves aren't usually the focus there, so it's a different experience. But yeah, we could definitely do that one of these days too. But yeah, like you said, drop us comments. What are your favorite explosions? There's a ton of great ones. It was not an easy list to put together, so I think we kind of went for some of the big iconic ones, but I think there's a lot of other ones that are just like, that's really cool, that we could mention as well. So All right, there you go. So that's our top 5 explosions. No overlap on our list. I thought that was kind of cool, actually. I think we
Yeah,
had
that
a
was
lot
good.
of similar. I think our short lists are probably very similar, but then our actual top 5, I feel like you picked all the ones I didn't. I picked all the ones you didn't. So that worked out
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
nice.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, it's good.
So, all right. All right. So now it's going to bring us to our final segment of the show, which is going to be ATE recommends. What are Phil and Mike enjoying right now? What are we digging on? What's cool as far as we're concerned. And as Phil, as you mentioned earlier, doesn't have to be movies. In fact, it usually
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah.
Be anything. So why don't you kick us off with yours then, Phil?
Okay, I've got a couple today.
All right.
One is a novel, Butcher's Crossing by John Williams, not
Hang on,
the not the
there we go.
composer.
Okay. Oh, I didn't wait. John Williams wrote a novel?
No, it's not him. It's
Oh,
an author called John Williams. Yeah,
okay.
that's
I
what
was
I would
going
like
to
to do.
say.
No, when was it first published? 1960. But
Okay.
it's a western, or it's told at the end of the western. But it's about this young man who ends up in this small, I won't say town because it's tiny, just a crossroads place called Butcher's Crossing, because he's trying to find himself. But he heads off into the west with a couple of guys to go hunting buffalo.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of a bit like Moby Dick in a way, about obsession and things like that. But it's about the telling of it's basically of a time changing and passing. Really blew me away. It was I devoured it over like about 2 or 3 days. It's a really good book. Recommend it.
Cool.
A bit gory in places, but not too bad. But it's yeah, I think it's getting made into a film as well with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, cool.
I don't know how that's going. And the other one is it's a collection that's just come out this week, I think. Astro City, the Metro book, Kurt Busiek's collection of written by Kurt Busiek, but it's the collection of Astro City volumes 1 and 2. So it comes with altogether, I think there's 18 issues in there, but it's just, if you haven't read Astro City, this is a good place to jump on. It's just stunning, great comic book archetypes all wrapped up in great stories, so much of it surprising as well. And it's still the very first one with the Samaritan dreaming about flying, even though he's like a Superman guy. It just makes me so sad, but also it's amazing.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't think to bring that up for my recommendations, but I bought that book when it came out last week at my comic store because I love Astro City, and it's been years since I've reread some of those stories. Now they're reprinting the entire series in this. I think it's 4 or 6 of these Metro books.
Yeah, so I'm going to get them all.
Highly recommended. It is kind of meant to be, it's like you said, superhero archetypes, but also sort of like Kurt Busiek doing what he did with Marvels, which was sort of like the focus is on sort of viewing the superheroes from the man on the street perspective. It's less like, following the superheroes around and more like normal people kind of and how they experience superheroes, So it's a really different kind of take on superheroes that is utterly fantastic. So that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, I love the way it jumps around. Yeah, just because, as you say, there's like man on the street, but then now and again it's from the superheroes, but even then it's a different perspective on it.
Yeah,
like the one with the marathon where you don't really think about that. He can do all these things, but
right. It's definitely, even when it is with the superheroes, it's meant to be kind of from that different angle. It's it's not just like, hey, there's a super team, we're fighting bad guys,
But I'm glad it's been reissued as well, though, because I read lots of the earlier issues, but then there's many ones afterwards which I just missed out and just didn't manage to catch. So it's been great diving back into it. So.
Absolutely. Great stuff. All right. Now, I have to caveat my recommendation real quick in that it's a book. I haven't actually read it yet. Now, I know what you're thinking, like why would I recommend it? I don't usually recommend things I haven't actually read yet. But here's the thing. I've sort of read pieces of it. Let me explain. So let me do the thing. Hang on. So here it is. It is Still Just a Geek, an annotated memoir by Will Wheaton. Now, here's the thing. This is an annotated version, an updated version of his original memoir, biography, whatever you call it, called Just a Geek. I did not read that originally, and now I have this one. It's kind of in this format where it's like the original stuff with annotations, and then he's updated and added stuff. It's all about him, like his career in acting, his sort of after acting career, although he still acts, but things like his love of video games, his social media, and all that stuff. But here's why I recommend it, even though I haven't read the actual book. A lot of the stuff from it, he does take some of the stuff from like his social media posts and bring those over, stuff like that. And I follow him on social media. He's one of my favorite people to follow on social. And I read his posts all the time. They're big, lengthy diatribes a lot of times. And so he's brought a lot of them over into the book. So I know that a lot of the content in the book is really good because I've read it as it was originally posted. I haven't read the book in its collected form yet, but I know that the content in it is awesome because he's really a great writer and just has a lot of great things to talk about, a wide variety of subjects. So I'm going to read it, but I got it today. It was waiting for me when I got home on my porch. I opened up the box and I was so excited about it. And this was maybe 10 minutes before I came upstairs to record. So I was like, well, I got to bring that. I got to talk about that because it just came out yesterday. No, it came out today, actually. It just came out today. So I was too excited not to talk about it. So even though I haven't fully read it, I can heartily recommend it. I don't think anyone will be disappointed because his stuff is awesome. So that's it. It's Still Just a Geek by Will Wheaton. Big Bang Theory, Star Trek, video gaming, all that stuff that's in here. And it's a lot of fun.
Excellent.
So there we go.
Sounds like an interesting format as well, doing it like that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've been flipping through it, and it's definitely like, it's got every page kind of has footnotes with like little extra stories and thoughts, and I love that stuff. I'm a weird footnote.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. As long as I don't have to flip to the back of the book, I like them when they're on the page, and then I love that, getting kind of the thoughts behind the thoughts and stuff. It's a really fun way of doing it for me. So I'm looking forward to it, and I will report in once I fully officially read it. I'll let you guys know how it is as well.
Excellent. Look forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we got a lot packed into exactly 1 hour. As I said, all right, so we kicked over to the 1 hour mark on the dot. That's pretty cool.
That is.
And I don't know. I find things like that exciting. But that is going to start to wrap us up. Phil, any last thoughts for our listeners/viewers?
Just go out and watch some good movies, some bad movies, and films with great big explosions.
There you go. What more can you ask for, right? Awesome. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We had a lot of fun putting it out there. Hope you'll have fun watching it and or listening to it. But that is going to wrap us up for today. So, as always, we thank you greatly for listening. I'm Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
And we'll see you next time.
After the ending.